Where is trust today? In every sector of life, government, business, even faith and personal relationships, we're so distrusting and mistrusting, and we isolate ourselves and we divide ourselves, and nothing good comes from that. It takes years to earn trust. It takes seconds to lose trust, and it takes forever to regain it. How many CEOs hide behind the legal team? What hits the fan? Instead of standing up, communicating openly, being transparent, what are consumers asking for today? Please be honest and authentic. Enough of the BS. Our filters are up. We're waiting. You actually have to be intentional and commit to getting outside yourself and putting somebody a bit higher than yourself. Well, there's a lot of CEOs that don't want anybody higher than themselves, and they're going to struggle.
Not at all.
Right? The view is different when you're in a trusting relationship and totally connected. And I don't care if you're a brand or you're an individual in a relationship, it's all the same.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is Mike Weisman. He is the founder of Higher Ground Life Consultancy. Their proven trust model empowers leaders to unlock sustainable growth by embracing and prioritizing trusting relationships over transactions to yield transformative business, behavior, and success. Mike, so excited to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. I'm so excited to be with you today. Can't wait.
Absolutely. Same here. We always like to ask our entrepreneurs, tell us about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into what you're doing today?
Well, my young look may fool people, but I was a 50s baby in front of the TV. And I can recall even at probably 7 or 8 years old, my favorite TV program, other than combat, because I love GI stuff, but my favorite TV show was Bewitched. Hopefully people, even young people, have gone back and seen these things. But I'm a bizarre character because I knew from like age 8 that I wanted to be Darren Stevens. I loved the world that he lived in. It was creative and it scratched that creative itch in me. I've always been a creative person. And I loved the campaigns that he would create. And it always had a happy ending, right? And whenever he got himself into a scrape, Samantha would wiggle her nose and she could get him out of anything. And I thought, wow, this is a magical world. This is what I want. And lo and behold, I spent 42 years in advertising and marketing. And it was so funny, Chris, because I learned very early on that whatever happened on Bewitched was not what the world of advertising and marketing was really all about. And I've got a wife that has superpowers today, but she can wiggle her nose all she wants. It couldn't get me out of the scrapes that I got myself into all those years. But I just had a passion. I think the real passion about it was the creativity and the collaboration, the people. It took a bunch of people to make something really cool. And I spent my career in advertising and marketing, most recently as the CEO of an ad agency that I ran in California for about 30 years. But what happened to me is that I started to burn out, right? So about 30 years in or so, I now understand that I had the luxury of being in hundreds of corporate cultures, nonprofit, for-profit, startups, multinational organizations. And I got to see kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of corporate life, corporate culture. I didn't realize how important culture was until I started to go through this transition in my own life, my own professional and personal life. But I was getting really frustrated because what was happening is I realized that somewhere along the way that there was so much emphasis being put on messaging and marketing and the latest campaign and what the transactional outcomes were going to be. It was like this hyper focus on transactions and what did you do for me lately? And yet clients were still struggling. And I was upset at myself and our organization that we couldn't help clients beyond some episodic or mercurial campaign boost in their sales. I realized, kind of taking a step back, was that the issues that they were having had very little to do with products, had very little to do with service, although some of them had flaws. The real issues were not products or services, they were relational in nature. I love the expression, because I still use it to this day, that if mom and dad are fighting, the kids know. So I realized that no matter how great a campaign we could muster for a brand, that we couldn't help them sustain growth if the culture itself was kind of rotting. My mom was Italian. She used to say, the fish rots from the head. That's what was happening. A lot of leadership errors and trust violations that were occurring inside and outside their business were preventing them from sustained success. They could see short-term sales, sure, and they'd measure them, and that was all great. But this underlying issue really started to get to me. And I said, you know what, there's got to be something deeper than this. Chasing transactions and chasing the latest campaign success is not going to lead me or our clients to long-term success. I realized that there had to be a different way, right? And my proposition, my hypothesis, after a lot of navel gazing and late nights, was the greatest asset that any organization owns. What do you hear when you talk to people? Oh, our people. Oh, our service capability. All of that is important. But I realized that the greatest asset that we all own, professionally and personally, is trust. And it's the trust and then the relationships that orbit around that. We have this antiseptic view, I don't know where it came from, of org charts and all of the organizational stuff that hides the fact that a business is nothing more than a collection of relationships that hopefully are pulling oars in a common direction with a common purpose. And yet so many employees, and I've interviewed thousands of them, and leaders, the water cooler chatter was feeling like they were feeling abandoned, not important. They couldn't get answers to their issues. And this is where all of this cancer begins in organizations, when there's not clear communication. And if there's not trust in leadership, if there's not trust in the promise that you're making as a brand, because you're seeing what's actually going on when they make meat in the kitchen, you're not just the customer at the table looking at this beautiful plate. You actually see how that stuff's made. And you realize that you're kind of living a lie. And I have to tell you, Chris, I've had guys in their 50s and their 60s in leadership that I've interviewed, and they've said, I made a big mistake. I came for the money. I came for the allure and the prestige of this particular brand, and then I stayed too late. And I realized that I've been compromising my values. And now I'm in, and it's hard to get out. And I just see the havoc that wreaks in people when there's distrust, or they don't feel valued as anything more than an economic agent. So for me, it was all about culture. Then my quest was, how do we build it? And then how do we keep it? And that's really what led me to this taking off one hat, which was building campaigns, and putting on another hat, which was building relationships. And that's what ultimately led to this kind of new expression and new season of my life, which is called Higher Ground Consultancy, Higher Ground Life. And just the idea, you might get a picture in your mind of what that looks like. Well, Higher Ground Life to me, at its core, at its essence, it actually stems from kind of my own makeup, who I am. There's a spiritual Mike that's very deeply rooted in who I am. And I realized very early on that, at least my premise, your listeners can argue with me, is that we were all born as relational beings. This idea of isolation is not the natural state of how we exist, right? And I've seen organizations isolate themselves. I've seen people isolate themselves. And what happens is an organization that hasn't built trusting relationships with their employees and their customers or their clients, they begin to atrophy and die. And it may not occur quickly. It's more like a slow death by paper cut. And sometimes you don't even realize that it's going on until you're too far into it. So this idea of building relationships became so vitally important to me. I realized that it's in collaboration, it's in community, it's surrounded by trusting relationships. We thrive, and we can accomplish much more within a trusting relationship than we can on our own. It's just the natural way of growth, personally and professionally. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years or so. And then trying to create, it's one thing to navel gaze and sit and stop in the theory. It's another thing to try to create some practical tools. That's what I've been spending the last number of years doing is, yes, going out, and I feel like I'm the guy out on the corner yelling, repent, repent. But what's exciting about the journey that I've been using this phrase for the last 15 years, and it's as true today, maybe even more than it was then. This phrase, for such a time as this. I mean, just look around us. Where is trust today? In every sector of life, government, business, even faith and personal relationships, we're so distrusting and mistrusting, and we isolate ourselves and we divide ourselves, and nothing good comes from that, right? The reason I'm still passionate, even at my tender age, about this is that it's like, people need to hear this. I'm out on LinkedIn as much as I can be. I'm speaking as much as I can because I'm passionate, and I believe that I've stumbled onto a truth that's just universal. It's not brain surgery. It's just common sense. Right?
Right. And not all of the most profound statements are wrapped up in like crazy, complicated text. Sometimes the most profound things are just simple, and
Right.
it is truth.
Yeah. And you can believe it or not. It doesn't mean that it's not true. It's universal. I think I've stumbled onto something that really gets to the core. It doesn't scratch the transactional itch that all organizations, and even we as people, we want to be affirmed. We want to be liked. We want to grow and earn a good, none of that stuff is wrong. But if you're not growing trust around it, you're going to find yourself out on a ledge someday when you really need somebody, not going to be there because you haven't invested. A company, look at what just happened to Cracker Barrel. Oh my goodness. When we get into the 5 C's, we'll highlight that. But the point is that their product is great. Their service was great. They're smart. They're competent. What happened? They forgot their customers. They didn't demonstrate concern. They weren't open and honest about their communication, and they violated trust. By the way, at a deep level, and what if we even get time to talk about it, trust occurs in different levels. At the beginning of a relationship, scientists call it a calculus-based trust. We're checking each other out. If a mistake happens early on in a relationship, you move on. If I'm deep into a relationship with a brand like that, if I've been going there for 30 years and I feel like they violated my trust or didn't demonstrate concern for me, well, look at the backlash. And the mistake isn't counted in dollars wasted or share lost. It's the human part. I violated the trust of a customer.
And how do we put numbers on that? Because at the surface, it seems that it's just more of the qualitative thing. We can't put a number on it. But if you actually look into what that data might suggest is losing that trust, you're losing a lifetime customer. That lifetime value is going to go down.
Yeah.
You're losing potential future referrals. And if they hear in discussion about this brand, if their friend didn't have a good experience, they're going to share that with them. And now
Exactly.
you lost future business too. And I think that's why so many of the most popular business books are still true today. Dale Carnegie, all the business books about building relationships.
Exactly.
At its core, this is what marketing should be focused on.
Yeah, but an old partner, a former partner of mine used to say, the weeds grow back. And because we know these things to be empirical truth, and yet life takes over, business day takes over, and we forget. And that's why I'm kind of screaming from the sideline, remember, ground yourself in this. And so that expression, it takes years to earn trust, it takes seconds to lose trust, and it takes forever to regain it. I'm going to be really interested in now watching the battle for that particular brand to see how they regain trust. It just can't be marketing. It can't be a marketing campaign. It can't be some perk that they give to loyal customers. That they'll go through all of that, but it has to be earned. It's based on your actions, not your words. So we'll see. I've got my fingers crossed. I really want them to succeed in a big way and learn from this and move on. Trust can be rebuilt. But what happens is it's like chutes and ladders. Now that I've built that deep connection and there's been a trust violation, I go all the way back to the beginning. And now I have to earn it. I'm back into calculus-based trust. I'm not the old couple on the park bench finishing each other's sentences anymore. That's gone for a while. Now I have to earn it all the way back. And it's very expensive.
Right.
And it takes time.
And I think a relevant recent story is even the CEO of McDonald's came out just a couple weeks ago saying that the light of American brands is diminishing right now. And I think that's a testament to even our perception as Americans and consumers was that these companies and corporations were this beacon of light and the leading force behind what a good business can be. And this is American and XYZ. But over the years, you see businesses pulling out features and services and raising prices and not treating their customers like customers. They're not asking for their feedback on what they want. And this has turned for the worst for them. Sales are down year over year from the previous quarter. People are finding alternatives. And I feel like brands felt that. You have no other choice but to eat here or to buy this. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, the leverage is completely in the hands of the consumer now, right?
Yes.
Because my story at the beginning, in the 50s, I had 3 channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And they told me I had to show up on a certain day to see a program. How many choices do we have now? Nobody's waiting for the next anything, Chris. I mean, how many salad dressings do we need? Well, there's a psychologist, I think his name's Barry Schwartz. He follows this and he goes, because of the proliferation of choice, we all become paralyzed. We don't know what to choose, which one's best. And then typically the one that we choose, we made a mistake. And then we feel bad about ourselves. So it's like, nobody's waiting for you. And by the way, you need to earn, and it's not earn their dollar. It's not earn their wallet, it's earn their heart. And unfortunately, because of the transactional nature of business as it is, very few businesses will take the time to earn a relationship. It'll pay dividends that will outlast them as leaders. But it's the more difficult path. It's the higher ground path to choose.
Right. But they can't show that in a quarterly report. They can't say, sure, they could say our customer engagement is up or the positive sentiment. But if that doesn't translate to the dollars in a world where these are public companies that they're trying to please the shareholders instead of the customers.
Right. And they've lost their way. They forgot who their customer was.
It's crazy. It seems like common sense to us, and I appreciate that you're on this mission and advocating for it, but are they listening out there? I'm worried that they're not, because these deals that they put on their apps, they're taking them away, raising the prices. The cost for a meal for a drive-through takeout, you could have a sit-down meal with a tip and a drink for even less, and they've lost sight of that. Like, how do we get them to listen? We can shout, right? But how do we get them to listen?
Well, eventually the pain will catch up with them. I find it so ironic that they make all of those mistakes. They short shrift the customer to shave a little bit off, to gain a little bit more in margin, shave a little bit more off in cost. And they're so caught up in the metrics and the numbers that they forget that there's a living relationship that's being violated. They're walking away. They're showing no concern. They're showing concern for themselves. Why an average CMO's lifespan 3 years? Or 2. I think it's actually shrinking. What about a CEO? There's a turnstile. Organizations are going through these leaders. They come in, they try to put their stain on it. It's all about accumulating wealth and sales. By the way, I'm pro-business. I'm pro-profit. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but if profit comes at the expense of your employees and your customers, something's wrong.
Absolutely. Mike, you're speaking the truth. And I do want to dive more into those 5 C's because building that trust to relationships here, I feel like that's an easy game plan for a lot of these businesses out there. Those being, feel free to go through them, whichever ones you feel are most important and can be impactful for a lot of our entrepreneurs and business owners out there.
Well, the 5 C's real quickly came out of about 2 years of study. We went all the way back to World War II. That was considered the greatest trust violation at the time. That's when social scientists flooded in, trying to figure out how could trust be eroded like that? How does that happen? How do we destroy relationships? So we looked at all of this research. What we found was this narrative. There are certain threads that hold trusting relationships together. We ended up with a model that we saw running concurrent through a lot of these different studies, and that's what we landed on. And we call it the 5 C's. and they come from interpersonal relationship building. We took what we learned from interpersonal relationship building and said, what happens if we take that into corporate America? Will things change? Because it's still a human business. Of course they're going to change. Let's learn from interpersonal trust building and bring that to the world of corporate America. That's been our quest. So the 5 C's quickly, they begin with competence, right? Competence answers the question, do you deliver on what you say? Think about that as an interpersonal relationship, and we all have them, and then also think about it as a corporate relationship. Do you deliver on what you say? And by the way, part of that is being aware of it's self-awareness, because we know a lot of competent people that are bores, and we would never want to be in a room with them because it's all about themselves. It's not just about being prepared, being at work on time, studying up, and being able to deliver. It's who are you as you're doing? That's really important. Competence is level 1. The second is consistency, which answers the question, am I reliable? Can people count on me? And I classify those 2 first 5 C's as the functional bits of getting into relationships. I can't go into a deep water of a relationship if I show up inconsistently, if people can't rely on me, and if I'm incompetent. You're not leaning into that relationship, Chris. You're leaning away from me really quick because you don't know who's going to show up the next day. And we've all worked around and lived around people like that.
Just 2 of those C's would send me away.
Yes, of course.
Those are huge.
The third C is candor. So what is candor all about? Well, candor is about being open, honest, and transparent in your communications. How many CEOs hide behind the legal team? What hits the fan? Instead of standing up, communicating openly, being transparent, and what's most vital about this C is it's like the great taboo. It's the word vulnerability. We are taught from an early age, both as men and women in business, do not be vulnerable because you will be eaten alive by the sharks. And a lot of us have lived those experiences, but ironically, being vulnerable is the gate key to going into deep relationships, even if I make a mistake and I own up to it. And by the way, that's what's going on right now with Cracker Barrel. Owning up to it. I'm sorry, we made a mistake. We're all about giving people second chances if you admit it. So you have to be vulnerable. Now what's happening is you're going from these self dimensions of trust building, competence, consistency. I can work on those for myself. I can be more open and honest in communications and even be vulnerable about where I am, because then people begin to relate to me and they begin to lean in and go, you know what? He's not perfect, but he's honest. And what are consumers asking for today? Please be honest and authentic. Enough of the BS. Our filters are up. We're waiting. The fourth C is concern. And that answers the question, how do you show that you care about the person on the other side of the relationship beyond your words? This is where you go from those inward dimensions of trust building to the external dimensions. Because what happens now? You actually have to be intentional and commit to getting outside yourself and putting somebody a bit higher than yourself. Well, there's a lot of CEOs that don't want anybody higher than themselves, and they're going to struggle.
Not at all.
Right? They don't put their employees above them. They don't serve the employees. People are there to serve them. The customers, they're lucky to have them, as you said earlier. Doesn't work. So how do I demonstrate that I care for you? And then the final one is connection. And connection is that couple on the park bench that fill in each other's sentences, because it takes the most intentionality and it takes the most time, because it says, I'm going to take time to get to know Chris. And I'm going to work at it every day. I'm going to show concern for him because I really like him and I want him to succeed. But it takes time. And I do have to be vulnerable. But when you get to that point in a relationship, if you've gone through those 5 C's and you get there, that's the other side of the higher ground. It's like the air is cleaner up there. The view is different when you're in a trusting relationship and totally connected. And I don't care if you're a brand or you're an individual in a relationship, it's all the same. It's all the same theory, and it's all the same put into practice. And that's really what I've been spending my life now passionately doing, is helping people. I kind of feel like, because of my age and the fact that I've gone through all this experience, and I love the higher ground idea here in this, I kind of feel like the Sherpa. I've kind of been there and been back, and I'm excited to help people make that climb. Whether it's an organizational leadership team, whether it's an individual, some of the tools that we created in premarital counseling and marriage and family counseling to help people understand that there may be trust gaps that you've created that you're not even aware of, and they're preventing your relationship from becoming strong and immovable. That's my life now. I work with corporate leaders. I work with all kinds of organizations, even faith-based organizations, ministries, because trust is at the foundation of success for all of them. And what we had to do was say, okay, here's the theory, but how do I hand it? What does somebody do with this now? So we've created 2 tools, and I liken them to, think of tool A, which I call the Trust Pulse Survey, as your annual checkup at the doctor. This is your blood panel. So Chris, I'm your doctor. You can come into me and you can tell me all the lies in the world about, oh no, I don't smoke. No, I only drink occasionally. No, you can tell me everything you want. Same thing happens when I go in to talk to a corporate leader. They can tell me everything that they want to tell me to obfuscate the obvious. And then we do the trust pulse, and that's the blood test. And what does the doctor say? The blood test doesn't lie. Mm-hmm. It actually sets a baseline of reality for where you really are. That's what the trust pulse is. We have a version for internal organizational trust and then external trust. Imagine a CMO, chief marketing officer, armed with a tool that could help them understand where they're strong and where they're weak in trust with their customers and vis-a-vis their competitors. That's a secret weapon. Right?
Is that a tool available for free to everybody? Where can people find that online?
Well, that tool is available in engaging with us. There is a cost to the tool, but it's minimal in comparison to a $100 million share reduction for Cracker Barrel.
And that's real money.
So spend a couple $1,000s to prevent that kind of a loss. It's well worth it. That's the blood test. So now we know where the trust gaps are. Now how do we come in and help? We've developed an online tool called Cultivate. And the online tool takes a deeper look at where are these trust gaps and how do we address them. It's a tool that, if you've read the book Atomic Habits, it's all about small daily actions. We've created an online tool called Cultivate. What we'll do is we have the blood test now. We know the area, which of the C's we need to really concentrate on. And then we go in community with employees, with customers, and we work together on small daily actions that begin to shift our behavior from the gap that we've created to help us climb out of that and re-earn and rebuild trust. They break out into like 21-day challenges because it takes 21 days to build a new habit, right? So we know this stuff. If you take neuroscience and you take behavioral science and you put them together in terms of helping organizations live out their purpose, rebuild their trust, and stay strong in that, you do it by small daily actions within a group that receive inspiration, encouragement, training, and every component of these also has this issue of gratitude built into it. Let's not forget what we're thankful for. Let's build a corporate culture of thankfulness and gratitude that spills into all of the nooks and crannies of the organization and then into the customer relationships as well. A smart CEO will tell his employees or her employees and his or her customers that they care about them deeply, right? And their relationship is highly valuable to them. If more organizations would work on building trust, not as opposed to building products and services, but put as much time into that, there would be much more sustained success in the marketplace right now.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of those businesses, the ones that are doing it right, keeping it smaller, personal, connected with their customers, when they have their group come together and brainstorm and get ideas together, they literally ask the customers for their feedback. And I
Yes.
love that your program brings it all together, because
Yeah.
too often it's just the board members who are making these decisions and
Yeah.
never ask a single employee or a director or any of their customers. This seems like common sense, but that's not how they are running business.
It's so funny because we've deployed this so many times. But actually, the first time we did the Trust Pulse survey, we did it for another ad agency. That I was in a network with another ad agency group, and this one had just acquired 2 new offices, so they had 2 different cultures to build internally. But the customers were suffering a bit too from this rapid growth. And the CEO came back to me and she said, "You know what, Mike? I'm not even sure if it mattered what questions we were asking the customers. The fact that we did this survey and I was able to write an email to my customers and say, we're doing this because we really want to earn your trust. And if we have violated it in any way, we want to know that. And we want to work together to rebuild that. So we are walking in lockstep." And she said the response, just from the fact that she sent the survey, was overwhelming because nobody else had ever asked them. How many employees walk around without a boss ever asking for their input on a particular issue that's being debated inside of a company? They atrophy and they die. They run out of enthusiasm.
It's unfortunate because there's a lot of good people, good businesses out there that just can't connect things together, and that's the reason they're not. But I think for most people, like you said, you can say one thing, but it's the actions that support it.
Right.
And many people are just realizing this is just smoke and mirrors. You're trying to pretty up some language here, and we can see your actions, and therefore it has a domino effect.
It does. And I mentioned earlier to you that I'm so passionate about the entrepreneurial spirit and startups because my whole career has been based on that. I went from a tiny ad agency that got acquired. I escaped out the back door, started another little ad agency. That one got swallowed up. I realized that the corporate life was not for me. I liked this entrepreneurial spirit. As much as I love the challenge of going into large organizations and realize that their habits, like an old married couple, their habits, good, bad, and ugly, they're kind of baked in. So to go in there and try to shift behavior is kind of turning the ship in the harbor. It's very difficult in a large organization, but in startups or even in organizations that still have that entrepreneurial spirit that's coursing through the veins of the organization, that's where starting on the right foot, right? Yes, you've got a product, you've got a service, you're very excited about it. You want to get it to everybody. Take some time and build the relationships with your team and with your customers and start out on the right foot. And let's grow trust as an asset at the same time that you're growing the rest of your business. If you do that, you're going to be successful long beyond the time that you bequeath your business to the next in line, whether it's a family business or the next group of leadership. You've done a really good job because what you've left them with is this trust. It's an asset that cannot be taken away, by the way. When you get into a relationship and it's firing on all of those 5C cylinders, it's very difficult for some outside intrusion to come in there. That's why employees will stay at a firm for less money, because of the culture and the trust that's been built inside. I use the example that my wife and I have been married for so long now. It would be very difficult for a guy with a pretty box of chocolates and a bouquet of pretty flowers to come in and upend our relationship because we've worked at it for so long together, right? So for any organization that's looking for the biggest competitive advantage, build trust. It becomes impenetrable from your competition. But if it's not there, you have no golden dome, right? You have no iron dome over you. Those missiles can come in and they can do damage.
Absolutely. A lot of external threats, and those threats can come internally if we're not cultivating that culture and really respecting and appreciating the employees, the customers, the clients, everything that kind of comes together. I do want to ask, Mike, where can people find and connect with you online?
The best way to get a hold of me is to go to www.thehighergroundlife.com. I have a blog post that I do there. All of our tools are available there, and they'll learn more about the theory and why we're doing what we're doing and the passion behind it as well. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere I can be to spread the gospel of trust.
Absolutely. And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description so everyone can get connected with Mike here. We only have a little bit more time. I want to ask one more question.
Yeah.
What is it, September 2025? What are you excited for most, kind of wrapping up 25 and going into 2026? Is there anything new or like that's coming down the pipeline, or are you just pushing out everything that has been working so far for you?
It's really pushing out everything. It's doing more good work in expanding the series of challenges around the 5 Cs so that they become even more actionable, more usable, working on the interface to make the experience of engaging with them something that is at a human level, very encouraging and inspiring and empowering. But I'm just going to go back to the why am I excited? Because for such a time as this, I really feel like there were a few years where I felt like I was just shouting into the wind, and the forces of corporate greed and evil and all of these things were out there in my way. I think that companies are waking up. I think that leadership is waking up, and we may not have control of external issues around us. I think that's kind of what we're battling right now, and creates internal frustration. I'm going to go back to my spiritual grounding. There's the saying that revival starts with you. So I may not be able to control all the things around me and my business. What I can control is me and my business. And I can choose how I'm going to show up each day. I can choose to whether to be intentional about building trust or not. So for anybody who's listening in a leadership position, that choice is yours every day in what you're going to decide to invest in. And I would just urge all those listeners that might be either in a struggle that they can identify, or even more in a struggle where they can't put their finger on what's going on, but they know something's not working. This is the time to make that decision. And I'm going to take a different look at this. I'm going to take off my CEO hat. I'm going to take off my CMO hat. I'm going to take off my marketing, sales, customer. I'm going to take those hats off, and I'm going to look at these relationships and go, is there something I can be doing to earn trust today?
Absolutely. And I think now more than ever is the best opportunity, where a lot of these big brands, like McDonald's CEO mentioned, the light is diminishing. This is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs, the smaller startups. This is your time to shine and really capture your piece of the market and build those relationships. But it all starts with the trust, and they have to focus on that. Otherwise, they're not going to be around much longer.
Yeah, they'll get carried into what I call the sea of sameness, which is not being able to distinguish one brand from another. It's amazing. What do they say? If you stand for nothing, you're actually standing for something. It's like, take a stand, make a decision. And I love that, what you just said. Be a light. That's what greater, more noble cause, whether you wrap a company around that, or if that's just how you present yourself in the world. Why would you not want to be a light to those who come to work for you, for those who are involved with you, for your customers that are fortunate enough to be in a relationship with a brand that actually cares?
Some great words, a lot of wisdom. Mike, thank you for sharing your experience, everything you've gone through, and appreciate you advocating for the consumer, the client, and ultimately it really is going to help these business owners out there as well, who for many of them are just regular everyday people who wanted to take a risk and found opportunities. Appreciate everything that you're doing, and keep up the great work out there. Really excited for everything that you have coming down the pipeline, Mike.
Thanks. I'm excited for you too. Keep up your good work. I love the fact that you're exposing your listeners to all of this different experience and information and thought. It's great.
I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you so much. Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.